summer, 1942. The Third Reich is at the height of its power. Having conquered most of Europe, Hitler turns his gaze toward the oil fields of the Caucasus and the industrial heart of the Soviet Union. The key to this strategy is the city that bears the name of the Soviet leader, Stalingrad. On August 23rd, the spearhead of General Friedrich Paulus's Sixth Army pierces the Soviet defenses. The German 16th Panzer Division, moving at breakneck speed, covers 40 kilometers in a single push. By noon, the tank commanders peer through their binoculars and see the shimmering waters of the Volga River. To them, the war seems almost won. The city lies before them, stretched along the riverbank, seemingly defenseless. The German soldiers ride home, confident that they will be drinking victorious champagne before the leaves fall. They do not yet know that they have just arrived at the gates of hell. The horror begins not with tanks, but from the sky. A low, menacing drone rises from the west, growing louder until it drowns out all thought. It is the 4th Air Fleet of the Luftwaffe, commanded by Wolfram von Richthofen. Their orders are simple: erase the city from the map. Over 1,000 aircraft darken the sky. What follows is the most concentrated air raid on the Eastern Front, a deluge of high explosive and incendiary bombs rains down on the wooden residential districts. The city, baked dry by the scorching August sun, ignites instantly. Oil storage tanks along the river explode, pouring burning fuel into the Volga, turning the river itself into a stream of fire. In just a few hours, the White City, as Stalingrad was known, is turned into a black, smoking skeleton. Because Stalin had forbidden early evacuation to avoid panic, the civilian population is trapped. In one single day of bombing, nearly 40,000 civilians are killed more than the entire Blitz on London. The city is dead, but the battle is just being born. General Paulus gazes at the ruins. According to the logic of Blitzkrieg, the enemy should be broken, demoralized, and ready to surrender. He orders his troops to enter the city, expecting a simple mop-up operation. But as the German boots hit the ash-covered streets, the ruins come alive with gunfire. The Soviet High Command realizes the catastrophe. Losing the Volga means losing the war's main transport artery. General Andriy Yeryomenko issues a ruthless directive. The city must be held at any cost. Stalin issues Order No. 227, not one step back. Hitler reinforces the Sixth Army with elite panzer divisions, convinced that armor will crush the resistance. But here, the German war machine faces a critical problem. In the open steppes of Russia, their tanks were kings. But in the mountain of rubble that Stalingrad has become, tanks are clumsy, blind targets trapped in narrow streets, vulnerable to Molotov cocktails and anti-tank rifles. Enter General Chuikov. Defending the city is the Soviet 62nd Army. By early September, it is bleeding out, pushed closer and closer to the river. Morale is hanging by a thread. Moscow understands that a change in leadership is needed. On September 12th, a new commander arrives, General Vasily Chuikov. Chuikov is a man of iron will and brutal methods. Upon arriving, he declares, "For us, there is no land beyond the Volga." He understands that he cannot beat the Germans with traditional tactics. The Luftwaffe rules the sky. The Wehrmacht has superior artillery. Chuikov makes a desperate decision. On the night of September 14th, as the Germans are breaking through to the central landing stage, he orders the 13th Guards Rifle Division, commanded by General Rattenkrieg, to cross the river. It is a suicide mission. The soldiers cross on barges under heavy German machine gun fire and strafing planes. Many drown before reaching the shore. Those who survive charge straight from the water into the enemy, engaging in hand-to-hand combat with bayonets and shovels. They reclaim the shoreline, buying the city a few more days of life. 6 o'clock, 7:30, Rattenkrieg. The War of Rats. The battle evolves into something never seen before in history. The Germans call it Rattenkrieg, the War of Rats. The front line is no longer drawn on a map. It runs through the middle of living rooms, kitchens, and factory halls. Chuikov introduces a tactic called hugging the enemy. He orders his troops to stay within 30 meters of the German positions, grenade-throwing distance. This tactical genius neutralizes the German advantage in air power and artillery. The Luftwaffe pilots circle above, helpless, unable to bomb the Soviet positions without killing their own men. The fighting becomes primal. A German lieutenant writes in his diary, "We have fought for 15 days for a single house. The front is a corridor between burnt-out rooms. The magnificent German Panzers are useless here. The rubble blocks their path, and Soviet sniper teams hunt their commanders from the shadows." The most famous of them, Vasily Zaitsev, becomes a legend, striking fear into the hearts of the invaders. The battle for the Strongholds. Every building becomes a fortress. 2 locations become legendary symbols of Soviet resistance: the grain elevator and Pavlov's house. The massive concrete grain elevator, filled with grain that burns for weeks, is held by a handful of Soviet Marines. They are outnumbered 10 to 1, cut off from supplies, fighting until they run out of ammunition and water. The Germans have to use heavy artillery just to dislodge a few dozen men. In the city center, a simple apartment building is seized by Sergeant Yakov Pavlov. With a small platoon, he turns the building into an impregnable bastion. They mine the approaches, set up machine gun nests in the basement, and anti-tank rifles on the roof. For 2 months, the Germans wave after wave against Pavlov's house. It is said that the Germans lost more men trying to take this one house than they did capturing Paris. The factories of death. By late September, the focus shifts to the industrial north of the city. Here stand the giants of Soviet industry: the Red October steel plant, the Barricades weapons factory, and the Dzerzhinsky tractor factory. These are massive complexes of steel and concrete. On September 27th, and again in October, Paulus launches massive assaults. The fighting moves inside the factories. Men fight among the twisted machinery, inside the cooling furnaces, and along the conveyor belts. The noise is deafening. Bullets ricocheting off steel beams create a cacophony of death. The Soviet 62nd Army is melting away. Regiments are reduced to battalions, battalions to companies. Reinforcements crossing the Volga have an average life expectancy of just 24 hours. but they keep coming. The ferry crossings operate under constant fire, bringing fresh blood to the meat grinder. The crisis of October. Mid-October brings the darkest hour for the defenders. The Germans launch their third and most terrifying assault. They throw everything they have at the tractor factory. The earth shakes as Stuka dive bombers relentlessly pound the Soviet positions. On October 14th, the German line breaks through. They reach the Volga, splitting the 62nd Army in two. The Soviet bridgeheads are now just thin strips of land, sometimes only a few hundred meters deep. General Chuikov's command post is under direct fire. He is buried in his bunker multiple times by explosions, but refuses to leave. The Germans are exhausted, but they believe one final push will end it. They capture 90% of the city. The swastika flag flies over the department store in the center. But the 10% that remains the bleeding edge along the river refuses to die. Lyudnikov's island. In November, the situation becomes critical for Colonel Lyudnikov's 138th Division. They are cut off from the main force, trapped on a tiny patch of land behind the barricades factory. This area, known as Lyudnikov's Island, is 700 meters wide and 400 meters deep. To make matters worse, winter arrives. The temperature plummets. Ice floes begin to drift down the Volga, making it impossible for supply boats to cross. The defenders are starving, freezing, and running out of ammunition. They fight with knives and sharpened spades. They build walls out of the frozen bodies of fallen comrades, because the ground is too hard to dig. Yet they hold. This stubborn resistance breaks the spirit of the German 6th Army. Operation Uranus and victory? While Paulus was obsessed with capturing the last few meters of ruins, he missed the storm gathering in the rear. Soviet General Georgy Zhukov had been secretly amassing a massive force on the flanks of the German army, guarded by weaker Romanian and Italian troops. On November 19, 1942, the trap is sprung. Operation Uranus begins. Soviet tanks smash through the weak flanks, driving deep into the German rear. 4 days later, the two Soviet pincers meet at Kalik. The hunters become the hunted. The 6th Army, 250,000 men, is completely encircled. Paulus requests permission to break out, but Hitler forbids it, promising supplies from the air that never arrive. Starving, freezing, and decimated by disease, the once proud German army collapses. On February 2nd, 1943, the guns finally fall silent. Field Marshal Paulus surrenders. Stalingrad was not just a battle. It was the turning point of World War II. The myth of German invincibility was buried in the ruins by the Volga. The tide had turned, and it would not stop until the Red Army reached Berlin.